Thank you. Thank you. I'm absolutely delighted to be here to have a chance to share a few ideas with you. And I congratulate you on the topic of this conference, because I think sustainability is the challenge of this century. Just for those that aren't from Canada, we've just finished a federal election. And after 5 years of a minority government, Stephen Harper has got the majority that he wanted. So for Canadians, we can now see the agenda that he really has in mind for us. The Liberal Party, which has been the long ruling party in Canada, was decimated, as was the Bloc Québécois, which is the separatist party. Now we have the opposition, major opposition, being the NDP, which used to be a socialist party. So it's an interesting time in Canada. This is all a sea change in Canadian politics. But for 5 years of Harper's minority government, and for the last 6 weeks of a grueling election campaign, you would never know that there was an ecological crisis that the leading scientists tell us is a threat to human survival, second only to all-out nuclear war. It's all been about the economy, and I suspect it's the same thing here in the United States. But we are totally then ignoring the tsunami that is really roaring upon us. Now, I know you all want to hear the good things that can be done, and meeting the sustainability targets, you're going to make money and all that stuff. Well, there are a lot of people here that can tell you how you go about doing that. I'd like to share something that I think is a far bigger picture to let you see what the context is for the activity we're going on. It's not about 10 easy ways to save the planet or 100 easy ways to save the planet. In fact, it's going to be very, very difficult. As was said, in March, I celebrated my 75th birthday at an age when you have to admit you're in the death zone. You know, there's nothing morbid about saying that. When you get to be 75, damn it, you don't have many years left. And I believe that as an elder, I have now to get on with the most important part of my life. You see, I believe that it's my duty as an elder to look back over a lifetime of experience, of thought and observations, and to distill a legacy that is something that can be passed on. You know, a few months ago, a reporter said, well, what do you want people to say about you after you're gone? And I was stunned. I said, look, after I'm dead, I don't give a shit what they say about me. I'll be dead. But it would be nice if there were a few ideas I had that might still be discussed. You see, an elder can offer a gift that has no agenda clouded by a desire for money or fame or power or even sex. Well, let's leave the last one out. Elders can speak the truth, I believe, that comes from the heart. And I hope what my words will do is prompt each of you to reflect on yourselves, even though you're not elders yet, to reflect on your lives and ask, what do you hope your legacy will be? And I think we should all be asking, well, what the heck is a life all about? What matters most to us? What brings us joy and happiness? And what do we want to leave for future generations? We're at a critical moment in all of human history when decisions that are made or not made could very well determine the fate of our species. Now that sounds very melodramatic to say, oh, that determine the fate of our species, but I can tell you that for over 40 years, the leading scientists in the world have been telling us we're heading down a very dangerous path. Sir Martin Rees, the royal astronomer in the United Kingdom, this year was asked by a reporter, what do you think the chances are that human beings will survive to the end of this century? And his answer was 50-50. James Lovelock, who coined the term Gaia to explain all of life on Earth, has said that 90% of humanity will be gone by the end of this century, while Clive Hamilton, an eco-philosopher in Australia, has written a book called Requiem for a Species. And guess who the species is that the Requiem is for? It's us. Today, many among my colleagues are saying it's too late, that we've passed too many tipping points to go back to a balance with nature. To them, I say thank you very much for telling us all this. Now, please go away and don't say anything more. I don't think it does us any good to say it's too late. It's too dismal, it's disempowering to say it's too late, and quite frankly, I don't think we know enough to be able to say it's too late. The important point is that we are at a perilous position in the state of the earth today, and the need to act is urgent, but hope, I believe, must be our driving force. How did we get to this point in history? I spent 30 years of my life as a practicing scientist, as a geneticist, and one of the things that has amazed me is the way that geneticists have developed techniques to manipulate DNA. And one very amazing thing they've been able to do is to use DNA to track the movement of our species over time. And all of the trails lead back to Africa 150,000 years ago. We're all basically Africans. That was our birthplace. And I want you to try to imagine what was the world like 150,000 years ago. There were still woolly mammoths on the planet. There were saber-toothed tigers. There were giant moa birds and giant sloths all over North America. The world was a very different place. If we try to imagine the Serengeti Plains, when our species was born, they must have been covered with animals in abundance and variety beyond anything we could see today. So try to imagine looking then 150,000 years ago for our species. You'd have to look very hard to find clumps of 3, 4, or 5 of those funny-looking, furless, two-legged apes, and that was us. And when you think of us in that context, you got to admit, we weren't very impressive. I mean, there weren't many of us. We weren't very big. We weren't very fast. An elephant can outrun the fastest human on earth. We weren't very strong. A chimpanzee weighing 100 pounds could whip my ass, and I suspect every one of you. And we weren't endowed with any special senses of vision, hearing. I'm sure no other species 150,000 years ago looked at us, started to shake, and said, "Watch out for them, man. They're going to take over the planet." I mean, what the hell did we have going for us? Well, of course, our secret, our advantage was invisible. It was a 2-kilogram organ buried deep in our skulls. It was a human brain that was our leg up. It endowed us with a massive memory. No other mammal on earth has the memory capacity of a human brain. We were curious and we were inventive. And those qualities more than compensated for our lack of physical or sensory ability. That brain was remembered from experience, learned by observations, created new ideas that it could then try out. The brain was aware of itself in time and space as no other animal has been. And we could dream of a world in the future. We could dream of a future in which we could avoid dangers and exploit opportunities. I believe our great advantage was foresight. The ability to look ahead. No other animal looks ahead as we do, based on our experience and knowledge, and says, if I go that way, there's danger over there, but over there I can find something to eat. That's the strategy that got us in only 150,000 years to a position of dominance on the planet. We've occupied every continent, and we are now the dominant animal on the planet. It's been an explosive growth. Just consider our numbers. 10,000 years ago, at the very beginning of the agricultural revolution, it's estimated there were 10 million human beings in the world. The agricultural revolution was a huge shift. And in only 8,000 years, when Jesus Christ is thought to have been born, we had skyrocketed to 100 million people on earth. And then we continued that acceleration. In less than 2,000 years, we reached the first billion people in the early 1800s, and now we are at 6.9 billion, on our way to some 8 to 10 billion by the middle of this century. We're now the most numerous species of mammal on the planet. There's a principle in biology that says the number that the population a species can achieve is inversely related to size. In other words, the bigger you are, the fewer there will be of you. If you're an elephant or a whale, You may number in the tens of thousands. But if you're a mouse or a shrew, you can number in the millions or tens of millions. Humans are now the most numerous mammal. And we're not small like mice. We're not big, of course. But we've now broken that principle because we've been able to use trade and technology to overcome the restrictions of space. And so we have become the most numerous mammal. There are more of us than any species of rat or mouse or rabbit. So just the act of staying alive. Every one of us has to breathe air. We have to drink water, eat food, clothe, and shelter ourselves. Just staying alive, because there are so many of us, means we have a very big ecological footprint. That is, it takes a lot of land, water, and air to keep us, each one of us, alive. But of course, we're not like rats or rabbits or mice. We have an enormous amount of technology used on our behalf. I mean, looking out here, I am absolutely sure there isn't a single person in the audience that has a huge field of cotton plants or a flock of sheep in your backyard. We don't grow the stuff that we need to give us our clothes and our sheets and all that stuff. That's all brought to us by technology. And so when you add up the technological impact of the way we live, that ramps up our ecological footprint beyond any other species. And it doesn't end there. Ever since the end of World War II, we've been afflicted with an incredible appetite for stuff. We love to shop. And all of the stuff that we consume comes out of the earth, and when we're finished with it, goes back into the earth, and that increases again our demand on the earth, our ecological footprint. And we have a global economy that uses the entire planet as a source of raw materials and the entire planet as a dumping grounds for our toxic chemicals and our waste. So and that global economy does something, I think, that is very destructive. It hides the ecological and the social impact of the way that we live. If we go to the store to buy a cotton shirt, I'm sure very few of us realize that cotton is one of the most chemically intensive crops that we grow. And the growth of large fields of cotton has been ecologically disastrous. If you look at the Soviet Union, where they had the largest cotton growing area around the Aral Sea, that is a complete ecological and social disaster. But we don't ask, gee, is that an organically grown shirt? Where was it grown? What was the effect on the local people or the local ecosystems? We just want a shirt, we pay money, we buy it, and we wear it. Same with our cars, TVs, computers. They're filled with metals. Mining is one of the most destructive activities humans carry out. But if you buy a car, do you say, gee, where did all the metals in this car come from? What was the ecological effect? What about were the people getting proper pay? What about the social impact of that industry? We don't ask those questions. We just pay our money, we buy the product, and we use it. And yet the very act of buying a product has repercussions that are ramified around the world. So when you add all of this up, our population, our technology, our consumption, and our global economy, we have become a new kind of force on the planet. We are now altering the physical, chemical, and biological properties of the planet on a geological scale. In the 4 billion years that life has existed on Earth, there was never a single species able to do what we are now doing to the biosphere, to the planet. Not long ago, only a few decades ago, we used to refer to hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, drought, forest fires as natural disasters or acts of God, but they aren't anymore. The human print, the human weight is now in or measurable in each of these events. Even volcanoes and earthquakes, we think that human activity like building large dams is affecting these things. We have become a force of nature. You know, scientists divide up the Earth's history into different epochs. Each epoch is based on a geological event. And the Nobel Prize winner, Paul Krugman, has said that we should call this the Anthropocene epoch. the moment in which humanity has become a geological force. Now, we have scientists and supercomputers to analyze the information we have, to tell us where we are heading. And now they are using the best tradition of human beings, looking ahead and seeing the dangers. And as I said, for over 40 years, they are telling us we're headed down a very dangerous path. But at this moment, when scientists are using their foresight to warn us, we are turning our backs on the very strategy that got us here. We are calling climatology junk science. We are castigating scientists as people who cheat or distort in this phony baloney ClimateGate scandal. We see the support of a handful of naysayers, of deniers or skeptics who 20 years ago were the same folks telling us that smoking wasn't harmful to our health. We're turning our backs on the strategy for survival, using our brains to look ahead and see where the dangers lie. If we're going to see the dangers and the challenges that face us, we have to see the world as it really is and where we belong in it. And here, I believe, is the greatest challenge of all. You see, we learn to see the world. That our perceptual lenses are shaped by things like gender, by religion, by ethnicity, by socioeconomic position. All of these things shape the way that we see the world. We think we can look out and we all see the same thing. Absolutely not true. All you have to do is ask an Israeli and a Palestinian to talk about Gaza or Jerusalem. And you see people who live in the same area will see radically different things. Talk to business people like you or a person on the street begging about the economy or welfare. Talk to a man and a woman about love, family, and sex. You'd swear they came from different planets. Our perceptions are filtered through lenses that shape what we see. A few years ago, I went to a village on the Andes Mountains in Peru. And I learned there that the children are taught from very early age that mountain is an Apu. Apu in their language means God. And as long as that Apu casts its shadow on the village, it will determine the fate of everyone in that village. Imagine how those kids, when they grow up, treat that mountain compared to a kid in Canada in the Rockies who's taught, I'll bet those mountains are full of gold and silver. The way we see the world shapes the way that we treat that world. So is a forest a sacred grove, or is it just lumber and pulp? Is a river the veins of the land, or potential for irrigation and power? Is another species our biological relative, or a resource? Is our property a home, or just real estate? The way we see the world affects the way we treat that world. And something has fundamentally changed our perceptions of the way we see the world over the last 100 years. For most of human history, we were local tribal animals. We didn't have to worry whether there were people across an ocean, over a mountain, or on the other side of a desert. We just had to worry about our tribe and our tribal territory. And that was the condition of humanity for 99% of our time on Earth. We knew that we were deeply embedded in the natural world and utterly dependent on it for our survival and well-being. People have always known that. In 1900, there were only 1.5 billion people in the world, but there were only 16 cities with more than 1 million people. London was the largest, 6.5 million people. The vast majority of people around the world, including the United States and Canada, lived in rural village communities. We were farmers. Most people were involved in some aspect of agriculture. And farmers know that weather, climate, the seasons are absolutely crucial to how well you do in the coming year. They know that the amount of snow in the winter is related to the amount of moisture in the soil in the summer. Farmers know you need insects to pollinate flowering plants. They know certain species can take nitrogen from the air and fix it as fertilizer in the soil. Farmers know that we are a part of and dependent on nature. In only 100 years, this fundamental shift has occurred. By the year 2000, there were now 4 times as many people, 6 billion people, but hundreds of cities with more than 1 million people. The 10 largest cities in the year 2000 all had more than 11 million people. Tokyo was the largest, 26 million people. Can you imagine? The vast majority of people in the rich countries like Canada, the United States, Europe, Australia, now live in big cities. So something shifts then when you move from a farming animal to a big city dweller. I have a friend in Toronto who lives in the northern outskirts of the city. And he told me he lives in a high-rise apartment that's completely air-conditioned. In the morning, he goes down the elevator into the basement, into his car, which is air-conditioned, drives down the Don Valley Freeway to the center of town and into the basement of his commercial building, up into his office, completely air-conditioned. That office is connected by tunnels to huge shopping areas and food markets. He said, "You know, David, I don't have to go outside for days on end." So in a city, it seems as if we're somehow different. We're so smart, we create our own habitat. We don't need nature. As long as there are a few parks out there where we can go camping and playing in, who needs nature? We're city people. And in a city, our highest priority becomes our jobs. We need a job to make the money to buy the things that we want. And so in an urban setting then, we begin to see the world in a different way, and the economy then becomes our highest priority. We forget the first and most fundamental reality, and that is that we are animals. I gave a lecture in Austin, Texas a few years ago. There were a lot of kids in the audience, and I said, "Now, kids, if you remember one thing from my talk today, we are animals." Man, did their parents get pissed off at me. "Don't you dare call my Mary an animal. We're human beings." We really see ourselves as something different, you know? So if you call someone a worm or a snake or a pig or a chicken, those are insults, right? Because somehow we think that we're elevated above them. I went to a store in Calgary. There's a big sign on the front that said, "No animals allowed." So I went and saw the owner. I said, "You know, if you enforce that, you're not going to have any customers." He didn't know what the hell I was talking about. We think we don't know. We don't acknowledge that we are animals. And our most fundamental needs are defined by our biological nature. I have learned from my Aboriginal brothers and sisters that the earth really is our mother. That's not speaking poetically or metaphorically. They mean it literally, because they say we are created out of the 4 sacred elements: earth, air, fire, and water. And we don't think about that. I want you for a minute just to think about this. The first thing every one of us needed the moment we left our mother's body was a breath of air. That breath inflated our lungs and then announced that we had arrived on the planet. And from that moment on to the last breath you take before you die, you need air 15 to 40 times a minute. And we don't even think about it. So I want you to think about that simple act. 2 to 3 liters of air deep down into those funny organs. If you've ever seen a fresh set of lungs and pushed them, you know, they're kind of mushy, squishy. Lungs have that funny texture because they're mainly made of air. Our lungs have an average of 300 million capsules or alveoli, and they're clustered like grapes around an alveolar duct. And we need 300 million of them to give the surface area to come into contact with the air. If you flattened all of the alveoli out in 2 dimensions, our lung alveoli would cover a tennis court. That's how much surface is all wrinkled up in our lungs. And each alveolus is lined with a 3-layered membrane called a surfactant. The surfactant reduces surface tension, so when the air hits it, it sticks or fuses. Instantly, carbon dioxide from our bodies rushes out. Oxygen and whatever else is in the air rushes in. Hemoglobin molecules in red blood cells grab the oxygen, and each beat of the heart pushes that oxygen to every cell in our bodies. And when you breathe out, you don't breathe all of the air out. If you did that, your lungs would collapse. About half of the air stays in your lungs, even when you exhale. So the point I'm trying to make is you can't draw a line and say air ends here and I begin there. There is no line. It's in us, it's stuck to us, and it's circulating through our bodies. We are air. There is no separation. And of course, when I breathe out, that air very quickly mixes in the room and goes straight up your nose. So we are air. If you are air and I am air, then I am you. We are linked in this thin matrix of air around the planet. When I say this to kids, I see them going, oh, yuck. I guess they think they have a little bubble of air that belongs to them. We are air, and we're all linked by that single matrix of air. Not just with all people in the world, but with the trees and the birds and the worms and the snakes that are all using that air. There's a wonderful thought exercise that an American astronomer, Harlow Shapley, did many years ago. He said, what happens to one breath of air? How do you follow a breath of air? 98% of it is oxygen and nitrogen. You breathe the air in, oxygen and nitrogen go in your body. When you breathe out, a lot of the oxygen doesn't come back out. That's why we need air all the time. 80% of the air is nitrogen, and you breathe it in, and some of it stays in your body and doesn't come out. But 1% of the air is an atom called argon. Argon is it's an inert gas. It doesn't react chemically with anything. So you breathe it in, goes into your body, breathe it out, comes right back out. So argon is a good marker, indicator of that breath of air. How many atoms of argon in one breath of air? Shapley calculates 3 times 10 to the super 18. 3 followed by 18 zeros. 3 billion atoms of argon in one breath of air. So if we follow a breath that comes out of my nose, within minutes, every one of you is breathing gazillions of argon atoms from that one original breath. But of course, the doors will open, and gradually that breath will go out across California, across the ocean. And according to Shapley, 1 year later, no matter where you are, because air is a single system, a year later, every breath you take will have 15 argon atoms from that one original breath I took a year before. So on that basis, Shapley calculates every breath you take has millions of argon atoms that were once in the bodies of Jesus Christ and Joan of Arc. That every breath you take has millions of argon atoms that were in the bodies of dinosaurs 65 million years ago. That every breath you take will suffuse life forms as far as we can see into the future. And I met another scientist recently who said every breath you take will end up being a part of every leaf and needle of every tree on the planet, because carbon dioxide comes out of our nose with every breath. So air is this wonderful substance that gives life to all of terrestrial organisms, that links us from the past to the present and into the future. That's why Aboriginal people refer to air as a sacred element. We say that we're intelligent. What intelligent creature, knowing the role that air then plays in our lives, would then proceed to use air as a toxic dump, to pour our most toxic chemicals into it as if somehow it's going to diffuse away and be of no effect. We are air. Whatever we do to the air, we do directly to ourselves. And it hurts me to see young couples who are trying to get out of their car and they're pushing their baby in a stroller on the street. Where is that baby's nose? Right at the height of the exhaust pipes of every car on that road. You might as well take a hose, hook it up to the engine of that car, and pump it straight into the body of that child. We are air. Whatever we do to the air, we do to ourselves. And it's the same with the other sacred elements. We are water. Well, I mean, nothing could be more obvious, right? 70% of our bodies is water by weight. We're basically a big blob of water with enough organic thickener so we don't dribble away on the floor. But of course, it comes out of our skin and our eyes and our nose and our crotch, and we lose water all the time. Well, when I take a drink of water, you think this is Los Angeles water? I mean, the hydrologic cycle means water cartwheels around the planet. We are water, and whatever we do to water, we do directly to ourselves. We are the earth because every bit of our food was once alive. And most of it grew in the soil. Most of it is plant material. We take the carcasses of plants and animals, break them apart in our mouths, and incorporate that into our bodies. We say we're intelligent. We know that we are the earth through the plants we consume, and we pour toxic chemicals into the earth. And we are fire because every bit of the energy that we have in our bodies that we need to move and grow and reproduce, every bit of that energy is sunlight. Sunlight captured by plants through photosynthesis, and we then eat the plants or eat the animals that eat the plants and store that chemical energy in our bodies. And when we need that energy, we burn those molecules to release the energy of the sun back out in our bodies. We are the earth. The earth is our mother because we are created out of the air, the water, the soil, and the sunlight. These then are our most fundamental needs. I said that I was a geneticist, and another thing that scientists have been able to do is to actually carry out the sequence, determine the sequence of all 3 billion letters in the DNA of a human cell. It's called the human genome. And the amazing thing that has come out of that study is that 99% of the genes found in our cells are identical to the genes found in chimpanzees. They are our closest relatives. But also that each of us in our genomes carry thousands of genes identical to the genes in our pet dogs and cats, identical to the genes in salmon, in eagles, in fruit flies, dandelions, and cedar trees. What the Human Genome Project has shown is that all of life, all of creation, is our biological kin, our relatives, because we're all related through a common evolutionary history. If other species are our biological relatives, then surely we treat them with greater care and respect than if we simply regard them as resources, or pests, or weeds, or vermin. And one of the astounding things is that in an act of great generosity, the web of living things on earth that are our relatives produce, create, cleanse, replenish our most fundamental needs, the 4 sacred elements. Plants created the oxygen-rich air that animals like us depend on. To this very day, all of the green things are taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and putting oxygen in it. If there weren't plants, the air would be poisonous to an animal like us. Life is a critical part of the hydrologic cycle. As water evaporates, condenses, rains, evaporates, life in the soil filters the water of many of the chemicals that are dangerous to us. In Vancouver, we get our water from 3 watersheds surrounded by old-growth rainforest. When it rains, the tree roots and other plant roots, soil fungi and bacteria filter the water. We don't have to do a thing to it because life has cleansed that water for us to drink. Life is every bit of our food, and life creates the soil. Before there was life on earth, there was no soil to grow anything on, because soil is by definition created when life dies and yields its macromolecules to the matrix of clay, dust, sand, and gravel. And all of the energy in our bodies and all of the fuel that we use, from peat to dung to wood to coal to oil to gas, all of that fuel is sunlight captured by plants. So the point is that the web of life, what scientists call biodiversity, or you can think of it as nature, actually creates the 4 sacred elements, the most important things to keep us alive. We boast of our great intelligence. We're a clever animal. But what intelligent creature, knowing the role that air, water, soil, sunlight, biodiversity play in keeping us alive, would then proceed to deliberately and so thoughtlessly pour our most toxic chemicals into them and to destroy entire ecosystems and habitat and drive species to extinction at an unprecedented rate? Where does that take us then as city dwellers? That's where our habitat is. As city dwellers focused on economics, we seem to have forgotten that the word economics comes from the same root as the word ecology. Ecos is the Greek word meaning household or domain. Ecology is the study of home. Economics is its management. What ecologists try to do is determine what are the fundamental principles, conditions, and laws that enable a species, any species, to survive and flourish. Not a bad bit of information. I would have thought that any government, any corporation, any group of people about to start a new program would say, whoa, wait, before we do that, what do those ecologists tell us are those conditions and principles? Because we don't want to do anything to violate those principles. That's the stuff that keeps us alive. But what we do is we elevate the economy above that. Canada, for 5 years, has had a prime minister who said, we can't do anything about climate change, it'll destroy the economy. So he has elevated the economy above the very atmosphere that keeps us alive. There was the last, not the last one, but the one before the last environment minister in Alberta. Alberta is our province equivalent to Texas in the United States. The second last minister of the environment said in the paper, environmentalists like Suzuki should understand we can't afford to do what they're asking for if the economy isn't strong and growing. So even the minister of the environment, whose job is to protect the environment, thinks the economy is the source of everything that matters. As long as the economy is doing fine, then we can afford to protect the environment. Let's put the eco back into economics. Well, I'm told by politicians and business people, Suzuki, you have to be realistic. That's why the economy is the bottom line. That's what I'm told over and over again. That's why last year I did a 13-part series called The Bottom Line. Because as a scientist, I know that there is a radically different bottom line. And that bottom line subsumes the economic bottom line because it's established by the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology. In physics, the first and second law of thermodynamics tells us we cannot build a perpetual motion machine. In physics, you know the law of gravity means that you can't build an anti-gravity machine here on Earth. And we know that the speed of light determines the fastest any rocket we ever build will be able to go. Those are laws of physics. They determine, they constrain the way that we live. And we live within that. In chemistry, it's the same thing. There are laws that determine diffusion rates, reaction rates, diffusion constants. We know that the laws of chemistry tell us what kinds of atoms can be made to react chemically, what kind of molecules we can create, how fast we can do it, and what their properties are. Those are determined by laws of chemistry. And it's the same in biology. The laws of biology indicate, as biological creatures, in order for us to be healthy and to live, we need clean air, clean water, clean soil, clean energy, and biodiversity. Without those things, we sicken and die. What kind of a species, knowing that those are the very foundation of our survival, would then proceed to use air, water, soil as we are doing today? Doesn't make any sense at all. Within the biosphere, those principles of physics, chemistry, and biology shape and constrain the way we live because they are forces of nature. Other things, free enterprise, capitalism, corporations, currency, markets, economics, these are not natural forces of nature. We invented them, for God's sake. And if they don't work, we can and we must change them. Only a few centuries ago, people believed in dragons, demons, and monsters. They really believed them. I mean, if they thought that the dragon was pissed off, they'd give them jewels and gold and sacrifice virgins. They'd do anything to appease those dragons. I mean, they really believe. Well, today nobody believes in dragons or demons or monsters. We know that they're figments of our imagination. But what do? We replace that figment of imagination with another figment of our imagination called the economy. And by God, do we treat those the idea of the economy the same way as the dragons. I mean, if you read the headlines, economy's not looking too healthy today. Man, do we get scared. We get really worried. Jump up and down. We'll give them gold or money, or not many virgins left, but we'll sacrifice whatever we can to keep that damn thing going. You think of the word, markets. My God, the minute you talk to a neoconservative and say market, the market, oh, the market, free the market, let the market do its thing. What a bunch of nonsense. We invented the idea of a market. The idea that somehow it's to be let free to do all these good things is absolute lunacy. What kind of a creature could believe in that? In 2008, the global economy melted down, and that was an opportunity. An opportunity to say, what the heck went wrong, and how do we get it right? But what happened? President Bush and then President Obama just began to pour hundreds of billions of dollars into the very banks that created the problem, into the auto sector without any strings and asking them, for God's sake, clean up your act. No, it was just give them the money and get them back up growing, and let's get going the way it was. It was Einstein that said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Why would we pump that money into that system that is clearly flawed? I don't think we can continue to treat the economy and the market as if somehow they are sacrosanct, when in fact they are so destructive, and we invented them and we can change them. We compound the problem by elevating other human constructs above forces of nature. We draw lines around our property, around our cities, around our countries. And boy, do we believe in those lines. We will go to war, kill, and be killed fighting to protect those boundaries. But you know what? Nature couldn't care less about human borders. I mean, do you think air pays any attention to human borders? I told the people in Alberta, you want to develop the tar sands? I don't care what you do, as long as whatever you do stays within the Alberta boundaries. Well, air doesn't stay within Alberta boundaries. We're finding once again after Chernobyl, the first country to report the fire at Chernobyl was Sweden, because air doesn't stay within national boundaries. Now with the accident in Fukushima, we're detecting radioisotopes in British Columbia, in both the water and in the air. Nature couldn't care less about human boundaries. Wind-blown soil from Africa comes all the way over to the United States. Do you think it stops at the American border and says, oh, geez, I don't have a visa, can't get into the States? They don't care. And yet you think about migratory animals, salmon or mammals or birds or insects. They couldn't care less about human boundaries. So look at what happens. Holy cow. That's 15 minutes. Look at what happens in Copenhagen last year. 192 countries trying to deal with a thing that doesn't belong to anybody called the atmosphere. 192 countries negotiating through the lenses of 192 political boundaries, through 192 economic systems. They will never work because nature cannot be shoehorned into human constructs. And yet that's what we try to do all the time. An economy is made possible by the biosphere, the zone of air, water, and land where all life exists. All of our raw material is extracted from it. We dilute away our toxic chemicals, effluents in the air and water and soil. And when we are finished with products, we dump them back into the biosphere. What keeps the planet healthy and habitable for creatures like us is nature. And yet, in our economic system, nature is not accounted for. Nature performs countless services that keep the planet healthy for an animal like us. And yet, economists discount them or ignore them. I've been involved in British Columbia in many, many battles over forests. Consider a forest. As long as a forest is standing, all of the green things in the forest, taking carbon dioxide out of the air, putting oxygen back in. Not a bad service for an animal like us. If they weren't doing it, we wouldn't be here. Economists call that an externality. They don't give a shit about that. It's not even in the economic equation. The forest community, insects, birds, mammals, pollinate all of the flowering plants on the planet. Without flowering plants, ecosystems collapse around the world. That's an externality. The trees pump massive amounts of water out of the soil, transpired into the air, and ameliorate weather and climate, an externality. The forest holds the soil, so when it rains, it doesn't run into the rivers and spoil spawning grounds of the salmon, an externality. So all the things that that forest is doing, so long as it's standing, economists discount as being irrelevant. That is nuts, as far as I'm concerned. When I see the screaming going on over the possibility of putting a price on carbon we put into the air, that's an absolute reflection of our inability to recognize that nature is performing services. And if we want to impede that or interfere with it, we should be paying massive amounts of money for that. But nothing, I want to end then by saying nothing is more destructive, I believe, than the way that we have enshrined economic growth as our highest priority. Ask any politician or corporate executive how well they did last year, and within a nanosecond, they'll be talking about growth in the economy and the GDP and jobs and market share or profit. Growth has become the very definition of progress. And this doesn't make any sense to me. Growth is just the description of a system. Growth by itself does nothing for us. It's what is growing that matters to us. And to what end is that growth going? But growth for the sake of growth strikes me as simply nothing. It's not worth anything. How can growth be the goal? It can't be. It's got to be a means to another end. But if we equate growth with progress, no one wants to impede progress, so we don't ask the most important questions. What is an economy for? Are there no limits to growth? How much is enough? Are we happier with all the stuff that we don't ask those questions. It's just we got to keep growing, got to keep growing. I'm going to show you why this commitment to growth is suicidal. Anything growing steadily over time, whether it's a population of your city, the size of your city, the amount of garbage you make, the amount of water you use, anything growing steadily over time is called exponential growth. And anything growing exponentially has a predictable doubling time, okay? So if it's growing at 1% a year, it'll double in 70 years. 2% a year, double in 35 years. 3%, 24 years. 4%, 17 and a half years. Anything growing exponentially will have a predictable doubling time. I'm going to give you a system that will show that you can't have endless exponential growth. I'm going to give you a test tube full of food for bacteria. The test tube is the planet, the bacteria are us. Those bacteria are going to go through division, they're going to divide every minute, okay? That's exponential growth. At time zero, at the beginning, there's one cell. 1 minute, 2. 2 minutes, 4. 3 minutes, 8. 4 minutes, 16. That's exponential growth. And at 60 minutes, the test tube is packed with bacteria, and there's no food left. Okay, so it's a 60-minute growing cycle. When is the test tube only half full? And the answer, of course, is at 59 minutes. 59 minutes, it's only half full. 1 minute later, it's completely full. 58 minutes, it's 25% full. 57 minutes, it's 12.5% full. 55 minutes of a 60-minute cycle, it's 3% full. So if at 55 minutes, one of the bacteria says, hey guys, I've been thinking we got a population problem. The other bacteria would say, Jack, what the hell have you been smoking, man? 97% of the test tube's empty, and we've been around for 55 minutes. And they'd be 5 minutes away from filling it. So bacteria are no smarter than humans. At 59 minutes ago, oh my God, Jack was right. We got a problem. We got 1 minute left. What the hell are we going to do now? Don't give that money to those economists, but give it to those scientists. And by God, in less than a minute, those bacterial scientists invent 3 more test tubes full of food. So they're safe. They quadruple the amount of food in space. Be like us discovering 3 more planet Earths right close by that we could occupy. So they're saved, right? So what happens? At 60 minutes, the first one's full. 61 minutes, the second's full. 62 minutes, all 4 are full. By quadrupling the amount of food in space, you buy 2 extra minutes. How do we add even a fraction of 1% more of air, water, soil, or biodiversity. You can't. It's fixed. We can't add to that. And every scientist I've talked to agrees with me. We're already past the 59th minute. So all this talk about we got to have more, is simply saying we have to accelerate what is a suicidal path. Now, when I say this to business people and politicians, they get very, very angry at me. How dare you say that? I mean, look at Los Angeles, look at our cars, and look at our stores filled with stuff. Our people are living longer, we're healthier. How dare you say we're past the 59th minute? I say it without apology. We have created the illusion that everything's all right by using up the rightful legacy of our children and grandchildren. You don't have to believe me. Just talk to any elder that's lived in any area in North America for the last 80, 85 years. Just say, what was it like when you were a kid? I've been in the Amazon. I've been in the Serengeti in Australia, in Japan, in the Arctic, and everywhere I go, I try to find the oldest person in a village. And I say, what was it like here when you were a kid? And the answer is always the same. It used to be so different. Used to be trees as far as you could see. The rivers used to be jammed with fish certain times of the year. Sometimes the skies would be black with birds. All over the world, our elders are a living record of enormous changes that have happened in the span of a single human life. And we know then that this is simply not sustainable. We have in North America, we're living like kings and queens and using up what should be allowed or here for all future generations. And that's the challenge that we face now with this whole issue of sustainability. How can we, in North America, who are rich beyond comprehension of past generations, how can we live in a sustainable way, demanding continued growth that is undermining the very life support systems of the planet? So yes, you can go about doing your corporate stuff. You can make money by being more efficient and using less energy. But we're all heading straight at a brick wall at 100 miles an hour. So this is the challenge, the true challenge of sustainability. Your corporations, your businesses, the people that you work with are not right now engaged in a process where it is even possible to have genuine sustainability on the planet. Thank you. You didn't have to clap.
David, we have time for a few questions.
I cut out the hopeful part because I wanted to get to the questions.
Okay, any questions? I can't see the lights here.
Yeah, there's one over there.
One right over there. Mind passing the microphone?
I think it was in the 1700s, there was an economist or political economist, Parson Malthus, who predicted the demise of the human race in the 1700s. Why? Because population was growing geometrically and food production was growing arithmetically. And so I'd be very interested in your perspective on how different your perspective is from that perspective, which also, was not very hopeful.
Yeah, well, what can I say? Malthus was in a different time. Who could have imagined in his time the explosion in technological muscle power that we have? We are now going to, the fossil fuel industry calls it extreme oil. We're going to get, we've used up, or we're certainly past the peak of the easily obtainable oil. And now we're going for extreme oil. And that's shale gas. We're going for tar sands oil. We're going for oil deep under the oceans. We're going to the extremes. We've had the good stuff, we've used it up. And it's a very different situation from Malthus's time. I think the thing that has shocked me, I began my foundation in 1990. In 1990, the World Watch Institute in the United States had said, this is a turnaround decade. We've got 10 years. If we don't turn it around, it'll be too late. And so we said, we're going to spend every dollar we get, and we're going to we got 10 years. Well, it's 20 years later, we're still fighting the same things. And what shocks me is how generous Mother Earth has been. We keep expecting collapses. Well, the fact is, the planet is in terrible, terrible shape. The oceans are in their last gasp. You know, by 2050, according to Boris Verm, there will be no merchantable fish left in the ocean if we carry on the way we are. And I could just go on and on. I mean, the documentation of the state of the planet is just horrific. And we're not focused on that. That's the thing that gets me. Our great advantage was the ability to look ahead and see where we're going. And I've said that I feel like I'm in a giant car heading at a brick wall at 100 miles an hour, and everybody's arguing about where they want to sit. It doesn't matter who's driving, for God. Someone's got to say, put the brakes on and turn the wheel. And those of us that are doing it, we're locked in the trunk. Nobody listens to us. So here we go.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, and I would say definitely inspiring with quotes around them. So we're headed down this road, and there's this exponential growth going on. So really, there are only two strategies. There's something to unwind exponentially what's going on, or brace for impact. So what are your comments on those?
Well,
approaches?
I think right now, we've got to brace for impact. I mean, it's coming. What we've done to the atmosphere, I mean, what's happening in the United States is something so horrifying to me. When you look at the status of scientists in this country now, who've been denigrated in such a terrible way by very, terrible, anyway, we're not even acknowledging the best source of information that informs us as to what to do. It's all ideologically driven now. But, the reality is, if we were to stop all carbon emission today in the world, temperature's still going to rise. We've already started the experiment. What's horrifying to me is that climatologists say we can tolerate a 2-degree rise this century. Well, when you went from a warm period to the ice age, or an ice age to a warm period, that warming took place at about 1 degree per millennium. We're talking about a 2-degree rise in 1 century. We've already had a 0.8 degree rise in the last 100 years. We're seeing huge impact. To keep it at 2 degrees rise this century, we have to keep our carbon at the level of 350 parts per million. We're already at 387, and we're going towards 450. And that's the thing that's horrifying to me. I couldn't imagine when we began our campaigns about climate change, the evil in the fossil fuel corporations. Led by Exxon, fossil fuel industry has led a campaign while they were profitable beyond imagination. Look at Exxon's reports every year for the last 5 years. The profitability in that sector has been immense, and they have campaigned tens of millions of dollars to say this is junk science. And yet we know they've known since the 1990s. Their own documents tell them that climate change caused by burning fossil fuels is real. If you read one book at all, read Naomi Oreskes' book, Merchants of Doubt. That is the shocker of a book, to see the deliberate program to undermine the credibility of climatologists and thereby undermine the credibility of all scientists. So yes, it's coming. People don't want to say that Katrina was caused by climate change, but that sure as hell is what fits the models. If you think the spate of tornadoes that you've had is unusual, well, guess what? It fits the model. We've got to make ready for that, for sure. But we also, I think, have to work towards zero emission of carbon. When Al Gore called for 100% generation of electricity by renewable energy, that was the kind of call that we needed. Now, I know we haven't got time.
We have time for one quick question.
Let me end with a story that I think is really important. I was starting my senior year at Amherst College in 1957. And on October 4th, we were electrified to hear the announcement that the Soviet Union had launched Sputnik. We didn't know there was a space program. And at that time, in the 1950s and early 60s, Soviet Union seemed so powerful. It was really terrifying. They were taking over Africa. They were making inroads in Southeast Asia. Russia seemed so powerful. The United States then began to try to catch up by launching its own satellite. And they had an Army, Navy, Air Force. All of them blew up on the launch pad. Meanwhile, the Russians announced the first animal in space, a dog, Laika, the first human, Yuri Gagarin, the first team of cosmonauts, the first woman, Valentina Tereshkova. And we're trying to get Alan Shepard up in a suborbital flight. America didn't roll over and say, oh, Christ, it'll cost too much for us to catch up. It'll destroy the economy. Americans rose up and said, we got to beat these guys. And when Kennedy announced that we were going to get to the moon first, nobody said, this crazy Democrat, what the hell is he trying to do? Destroy this country? And you think about what happened. I mean, I was a foreigner living in your country. And all you had to do was say, I like science, and you threw money at us. I mean, I got an education I couldn't get anywhere in the world in the United States because Americans said, we've got to catch up to the Soviet Union. And look at what happened. Every year, 50 years later, America still practically owns the Nobel Prizes that come out. That's because the investment was made back in the 1950s and 60s. Nobel Prizes are an indication of the state of your science. And you think about all the things that happened. You know, not only was America the only country to land humans on the moon, but you have 24-hour a day television news channels, you have GPS, cell phones, all that stuff. Nobody imagined that stuff would drop out by making that commitment. All that America was trying to do was get to the moon. I am absolutely sure the same thing is going to happen once we make the move towards a carbon-free energy source. All kinds of things are going to come out of that. We have to make the commitment.
Thank you very much, David.